The two ordinary hosts of this podcast are not professionals on parapsychology, extraterrestrials, cryptozoology, nor would they describe themselves as religious or prone to superstition. They'd also like to make it known that this show is not intended for children or those with sensitive sensibilities. Please listen at your own discretion. And remember, the truth is often anecdotal.
Hello, listeners. I am Mr. R.
And I'm Mr. X.
A pair of normal dudes.
Reading paranormal stories.
Very nice. Throughout recorded history, from prehistoric cave paintings and ancient pictography to internet forums and blogs, humanity has been firmly fixated on what or who resides beyond the stars. Today we are speaking, of course, about extraterrestrials, the Martians, little green men, or, to say it simply, aliens. The many numerous accounts of experiences and abductions have given us some insight as to what these beings might want, what they're doing here, and more importantly, what they look like. Ranging from the classic greys to the scaly reptilians, or even some that have been described to be space-faring Scandinavians. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it has been made clear that we humans do not need to travel far, or at times at all, to experience these interstellar foreigners, as it would seem that they are just as, if not more, interested in us. Mr. X.
Yes.
Have you ever been abducted?
Abducted? No.
Oh, well, this has been a short interview.
Yeah, I'll say. Of all paranormal activity, I feel like aliens are the most probable, only because of how vast our universe is. It's statistically impossible that we're the only intelligent life. But also the skeptic in me knows it's just as statistically impossible for them to find us as it is for us to find them. So whatever these encounters are, I'm sure they have explanations. I hope that it's real aliens. That is one thing that I would like to believe in and experience. But I think the evidence points differently. With that said, though, I do have a personal story for this episode. So,
ooh, okay,
yeah. I'll save that one for my last one, though.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want me to start this episode?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I've only chosen two stories. Both of them are quite short, but I'm sure we can discuss them. The first one, it kind of made me laugh, and I mean, you already know that's the one I'm going to pick. So it was posted to r/alien abduction on Reddit by a user named Tangerine Ancient 3323 with a title, "Would like to see if anyone had similar experience," or EXP. This happened in either 8th or 9th grade, and I get laughed at every time I tell this story. I went to bed at a normal time, no medication, drugs, or alcohol involved in 8th or 9th grade, mind you. This felt like a dream, but I can guarantee it wasn't. Here's the story. I like it when stories have little preambles like that. That's nice. I woke up at 5:50 a.m., nothing new, rolled back over to get some more sleep before I had to go to school, but I couldn't shake that being watched feeling. So I looked down at my feet, and there was a 4-foot-tall, greenish-gray guy standing at the foot of my bed. I froze in absolute fear. I didn't speak. He didn't speak. We just stared at each other. After a minute or two, I got the nerve to stand up and try to tackle the dude, but he just jumped over me, landing on my bed and staring. I remember thinking, one last chance. I tried tackling him again, no avail. I was facing the wall, but it seems as though all time stopped. I heard him run down the stairs and heard a deep bass whoosh. This is when the dream state was over. I, quote, woke up and looked at the clock, and it was 5:54 a.m. I can't stress enough that this is a true story and a serious one. After that night, I wasn't able to sleep for weeks, running off about 3 to 4 hours of sleep every day. That was the night I genuinely became terrified of extraterrestrials. Then he goes on in the post to ask if anyone else has ever experienced anything like this.
Wow, that's pretty similar to one of my stories that I have. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
That's exciting.
Okay. So he I mean, okay, fair. You see an intruder in your room, I guess do whatever you can to get them out. But
sure.
Trying to tackle it twice, that's
that's
bold.
Yeah, there is something to be said. Like, here, it's 5:50 in the morning. You're like 13 years old. You wake up, you look at your clock, your watch, and you're like, it's not time to wake up. My alarm hasn't gone off yet. And you look down and there's just this small guy in your room. And after a moment of what I can only assume to be like that paralyzing fear where you're just like, maybe if I don't move, nothing will happen.
Right.
Still nothing happens and that person's still there. And you get up the gumption to physically attack this thing, and it just very simply jumps over you.
So there's a hold on, I'm gonna have to send this to you just so you can react live. There's a
Okay.
TikTok that I saw literally the other day, and having heard this story now, I can only assume that this TikTok features, what was the username? Tangerine Ancient 3323.
Yeah.
Because it's you'll see. Let me find it real quick.
Okay.
Okay, I just sent it to you. So take a look at that, and this is who I assume this poster is. And if you want to describe it after you watch it.
Okay. I'm just looking at the thumbnail right now. It's oh no, I haven't even clicked on it yet. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Whew. Okay. Okay, so for the viewers, I should say for the listeners, obviously, I guess a prank video. The girlfriend has gotten their hands on I don't know what this is, like a foam or a rubber doll of some kind.
Yeah, you'd have to
like
hope
a throw
it's
pillow.
You'd have to hope it's some kind of soft material the way this guy reacts.
Yeah. And it's standing up on like a beanbag, and she tells him to come in the room, and he says why, and she's like, just come here.
And
he comes in.
Just to specify, it is like a figure of a little gray alien.
Yes,
the black eyes and everything. Pretty realistic looking.
It's pretty realistic. Aside from the back, which is completely flat and it sits flush against the wall.
Yeah.
And so he comes in the room kind of like really casually. He holds onto the door frame and he swings himself in, and he's almost touching this thing by the time he realizes it's there, and immediately punches it in the face. like no hesitation, sees it, punches it.
Who reacts like that?
I'm like, it makes me think, like, what if it was a kid in like a costume?
Yeah. I was like, what if there was just like his best friend he hasn't seen in years because
yeah.
Maybe he was off on military service or something, and he's sitting there to surprise him, and this guy's first reaction is just to punch whatever he sees in his peripheral vision. Oh, man.
I'm looking at this clip again. This guy's fast.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he's a professional fighter, but God, he fucking should be.
So this is the second time that a video has popped up that I can't explain to myself why it took them so long to notice. Like, obviously, this video is only like a couple seconds long, and he notices it pretty quick, but he's leaning in pretty far in the room before he reacts, because he just doesn't see it right away. But I also saw a video recently of a man stepping out to get a package on his front doorstep, and there's an iguana, or at least a very large lizard, just standing on their doormat. And as the guy walks out, he's looking directly at this thing, but it takes him a second. He doesn't react until it starts running away because he almost steps on it. And I'm just like, how are you guys so oblivious, at least for a few seconds? Because I feel like I would have noticed that thing like as soon as I walked in.
Well, there is something to be said about being in like home turf, like being
your guard
comfortable.
Is down. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not on the lookout for stuff like that. So like maybe that's the excuse this guy could have, but the retribution at which he acts upon to punish this little alien for existing near him is dramatic and swift.
So one of the comments on this Reddit post, I really like because it says, lots of people have had similar stories. Next time, don't think. It was reading your mind. Just act. And I think that's what this guy in the TikTok video does. So.
Yeah, no thinking at all. There's no way to have read that guy's mind.
I sure didn't.
No, there's no chance. I thought, I was going to see it and then take a second and then, I'm scared.
Yeah.
No, he smacks this. This would have done some real damage to a person. Is like, it's just how surprised I am how hard he hits this thing.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Another comment was asking to. So sorry, I'm going back on the Reddit post.
Yeah.
Someone named the Fire New 3030 said, talk more about the sound. That might be the only thing in your story another might have experienced, myself included. Could the sound be described as a digital sounding crunch, like someone laid down a 10 by 10 sheet of plywood on grass, but in a single even smash? Hey, I'm a pretty imaginative guy. What the fuck would that sound like?
This guy must be a Foley artist.
Yeah, he's like, does it sound like maybe some lettuce, like slapping a chain? The original poster said it was almost like the bass at a movie theater. I don't remember exactly how it sounded. I just remember a whoosh with deep bass.
Oh, he's thinking of the THX sound before. Well, Discord did not like that from you, Roger.
No, my recording got it. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh man, that's kind of crazy because the story I have is extremely similar, except. Well, here, let me just jump into it. So,
yeah, go ahead.
That's a good enough transition. This one is from the subreddit Alien Encounters, posted by user Carrie Marie, and they titled it "A Wednesday Night I'll Never Forget." So they post, "We'll never forget. Summer before 7th grade." So, wow, I didn't realize it was that similar. Sometime in July, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. The evening before, my family had watched the old school show Unsolved Mysteries. I woke in the night, lying on my right side, awake, but my eyes still shut, completely silent. None of us ran fans back then to aid in sleep. I was awake and basically waiting to fall back asleep again, however, decided to open my eyes. On the right side of my bed, right there, was a being, seemingly fixated on a plush bear that I kept in bed with me. And this being fit all the descriptions I'd ever always heard about or watched on television. Shorter, pale gray skin, and those awful eyes, huge, black, slanted, staring at my bear, right by my bed. Honestly, I cannot put into words how I felt right at that moment. I was only just about 12 at the time. At some point, I pulled my covers over my head and felt an awful rushing through my body of super warm, then cool, then warm again. Only later in my life did I understand I was most likely feeling shock. I couldn't scream, felt frozen, too scared to scream maybe? What if I did scream? My mother and my stepfather and 2 brothers would hear me. What would they do if they came running into my room and saw this thing? What would it do? Is it going to kill me, abduct me? What if it already had and they were returning me? All these thoughts plus a million more just racing through my young mind. Awful just recounting it and writing this story here. Again, how could I ever forget something traumatic like this? This is where the story differs. So, being such a brave 11-year-old, and after what felt like 12 hours, I decided to try and scare it. I decided I would thrash my legs up and down from under my covers as hard as I could. I know, horrifying. I was so petrified though, so I did this, then remained under my covers just waiting. Nothing happened. So I stayed under the covers. This had to be at least close to going on 2 hours from the first time I opened my eyes and saw this thing. As I lay wide awake, I heard a noise. To this day, I still cannot explain exactly how it sounded. The sound felt as if it surrounded me and was coming from outside. It was a crisp, clean-sounding sound.
Okay.
Maybe mechanical, but maybe not, lasting only about 2 seconds. A sound that I definitely had never heard before and definitely have not heard since. As soon as I heard the sound, something in my mind told me, oh, they're gone. As crazy as it sounds, I firmly believe the sound was their transportation leaving. Needless to say, I didn't sleep the rest of the night, early morning. It took me so long to confide in my family about this terribly scary incident. Of course, they did not believe me. However, now from time to time, my mother will mention it and suggest that maybe that's why I suffer from insomnia now. Very well could be. And then they go on to say that this is their first post on Reddit. Feel free to share any thoughts, so on and so forth. So those are almost identical stories, except for the fact that one kid tried to tackle the thing and the other just thrashed around under their sheets to scare it.
I will say, evolutionarily, putting on a big display like that, that could have worked.
Yeah, it works on bears, apparently.
Yeah. Like, you see it all the time with smaller animals. Like, if they know they're not fast enough to run or strong enough to fight back, they'll just kind of throw a fit.
Yeah.
And predators are just like, I don't know about this one.
I'll skip this one, maybe.
Yeah, this one might be a little too much trouble. How was it described?
The alien or the sound?
No, I got the sound. Well, how was the alien described?
Just like a typical gray, kind of like the gray in the TikTok that I sent you.
Okay.
Described it as short, gray, black eyes, so on and so forth.
So this thing, right, this being, whether it was dropping them off or coming to get them, standing in the bedroom, did it say it was staring at a bear, a teddy bear or something?
Yeah, whenever I first read it, what I had implied was that it was staring at just like a plush it had in like the corner of their room, but apparently it was staring at a plush that they had with them in bed. So it, with large black eyes like no pupils, whether it was staring at the bear or staring at them, who knows? If it was that close to you staring, it's creepy regardless.
Definitely creepy. Should have offered the bear though.
Yeah, just been like,
yeah,
here you go.
Hey, is it this? Do you want this? I bet you haven't probed one of these yet.
Just made a stuff.
Both of these stories being between like preteen to teen, I'm trying to think of what I would have done, and I think the answer would have been shit my pants. Like, I don't know if there's a version of those stories where I try to tackle it,
Yeah. Okay, so this one also, when I was reading it, just kind of sounded like sleep paralysis because they couldn't move. I don't know if No, it was another story that I was looking at that was very similar to both of these that kind of described that they couldn't move. This person said specifically that they couldn't scream, and
right.
Honestly, the thought to like try to thrash around is one that you get whenever you're experiencing sleep paralysis because you can't move and all you want to do is move. And so thrashing seems like the most rational thing to do to try to get you out of that state. So it is a possibility that this is just a case of sleep paralysis and an 11-year-old freaking out to the point that they make up a whole creature staring at them, as people often do with sleep paralysis. But yeah, as a kid, I don't know how I would have reacted. I was kind of a scaredy cat at that age, honestly. But yeah, no, just strange. There was another story I was looking at where they described, like I said, something very similar, except in their experience, it was a mantis-shaped alien.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't like that.
I saw another post with a mantis alien, but this person was like 2 years old, so I was like, there's no way you're remembering this correctly at 2 years old. Yeah, go ahead.
So sorry. There's some accounts that you read online where someone's like, I had this dream. I will immediately skip those. Or ones that begin with, I was a baby or a toddler.
Right.
I'm like, shut up. And to be fair, there are some people that have memories, like I forget what it's called, but you can remember the day you were born or
right.
like laying in a crib. But I don't know, the internet's, I feel like it's not that small of a world.
Right. See, my earliest memory was at like my 4th birthday party or something like that. The reason I discredited this person's story was because they were like, I was 2 years old. I got out of bed and went into the kitchen to grab a snack.
No, you didn't.
No, like if you're
no,
too,
shut up.
You're too small to even open the fridge at that point.
And then I got my screwdriver out and I unlocked my playpen, and me and my friend Chucky invaded the fridge.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Although, to be fair, there is a story that I don't remember, but my family tells me all the time, is that when I was 2 years old, my parents were living in Puerto Rico for a little while, and myself, my twin brother, and our cousin, who was also 2 years old, we all just got up, walked out the front door, down a flight of stairs, like an outside flight of stairs made of tile, and then walked all the way to a convenience store that was like up a pretty huge hill. So, I mean, I guess it's possible, but remembering it, I'm not too sure about.
I can believe that a 2-year-old has the autonomy to perform things, but to remember it, no, I don't. I'm not sure. I think around the age of like 6 or 7, we hit like an off switch, right? Like,
right.
Like we hit a reset that kind of goes through our updates of software, and we kind of forget some stuff that we don't need to remember.
Yeah. But all right, I think, wow, those two stories fit together pretty well.
Absolutely.
Even managed to find a video clip for it, which we'll post in the description for audiences to watch.
I just reposted it on Twitter. Let's see. This next one, I don't think you're gonna have a similar story to, but we'll see. This was posted in This was posted in r/UFOs by a user named Not an Unhappy Rock. The title is, I saw something when I used to fly for Delta. The title alone got me super interested in this, because if I'm gonna believe anything that anyone says about a flying object, it's people that are up there,
Sure.
You could see a balloon from the ground and be like, well, it's shaped like Spider-Man, so I saw Spider-Man. Yeah, so
okay.
The post reads thusly: I was a pilot for Delta for a while. I saw something fly very close to us as we were climbing out of the clouds. I was the co-pilot, and the captain saw it too. It must not have had an active transponder because it didn't trigger our TCAS and ATC. Oh, what? It didn't trigger our TCAS, and ATC didn't pick it up on radar. We both filed a report with Delta and the FAA. I didn't know what happened with those reports, but I'm pretty sure they were quietly buried. Both of us absolutely saw something, with enough certainty to sign a sworn affidavit. But it didn't show up on radar, so, officially, it never happened. This is highly concerning to me. Neither myself nor the captain approached this with the premise of little green men. We were both very concerned about the possibility of drones with advanced stealth operating in US airspace, and we were utterly dismissed. And so, that concerns me in a lot of ways. In that, if it was, militaristic testing drones with hyper crazy stealth stuff going on, it's gonna get buried anyway, because the government's not gonna be like, we might be outmatched here. But also, it was revealed that like UFOs are UAPs, is that what they're called now?
Yeah, UAP.
Are just like, they were all admitted, right? They all just kind of came forward and said, yeah, that's a thing, and here's like some evidence of it. So for this to kind of get swept under the rug, I don't know. I'm not sure where to take that.
So this is a pretty common occurrence with pilots. It sounds like this person specifically is the only time they've ever experienced it, but it happens so much in the air that it's pretty commonplace. Burying it, I wouldn't put too much into that. I would just assume that they read the report and thought, it's nothing, and just went on.
So my main problem with the story is that he doesn't describe what he saw.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
It just says, I saw something.
Yeah, and I pulled it up and I saw how short it was, and then he was like, and they just buried it, and I was like, well, it doesn't seem like you were very descriptive.
So there's a couple of things that like, with a lot of stories, if people give too much detail, you're like, you're making this up.
Right.
And this doesn't have like a very satisfying like end to it, which it makes me believe that they saw something. Absolutely. But man, I just a little bit more. I just need a little bit more. I want to know. I want to know what you saw.
What did it look like? So one of the comments, they asked, what did it look like? And the OP responds with a blur. It crossed our nose so suddenly that I couldn't make out any of its features. If I were to take a wild guess, I would say it was within a mile of us, about the size of a 737 and traveling near supersonic. So catching that alone is impressive, but it does kind of leave a little too much to the imagination, enough plausible deniability.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's impressive that he caught it, but what it could be, literally anything. And I think that's exactly what his higher-ups thought, too.
It's so funny. So one of the comments is like, thanks for posting. Post over on r/UFO pilot reports, too. Guess who's going to follow that now? Boom. I hope I get some cool stuff from this. So I guess my takeaway is, if you're a pilot and you're up there in the sky and you see some weird stuff, but you don't see enough weird stuff to be able to describe it online, yeah, maybe tuck that one in. Maybe save that. Or lie. Make it up. Make it more interesting.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like, you got to write your official report, sure. It literally just zooms past you.
We're not going to see that.
Whatever. But if you're posting on Reddit for literal karma points, just make it up. It followed you for a while. It was changing colors. You literally saw a little dude wave at you. Who knows? Just spice it up a little bit. So, with that said, UFOs, UAPs, are those considered alien encounters? Are they just considered something completely different? We're going to put them together in this episode because, like I said at the top, I have a personal story that I think I can classify as a UFO or UAP. And I'm going to go ahead and share that with you guys.
I'm so excited. Yeah, do it.
So this is going to need a little bit of context. I, as a child, moved around a lot. I spent time in New York, Florida, Puerto Rico, as I mentioned, Texas. We're currently in the Rocky Mountains now in Colorado. But my formative years, or some pretty formative years, around 7 to 12, I was living in Florida, mostly in a small town called Naples, in a little cul-de-sac area called Lunar Street, right off of Bayshore Drive. And this was a pretty low-income area. Now, looking back, I realize that it was kind of drug den and a crime haven, but, as a kid, you don't really pay attention to that. Plenty of other kids in the neighborhood. It was kind of like growing up in the Ed, and Eddie cul-de-sac. Lots of little characters, and as kids, we didn't pay too much attention to all that other stuff. If you continue down Bayshore, you would eventually hit some pretty traditional suburban middle-class neighborhoods. And if you went to said bay, you'd be right across that bay from like some pretty affluent mansions that were owned by the likes of like Judge Judy, Steven Spielberg, and Tom Cruise. But Lunar Street was kind of flanked by a man-made canal, which I think they dug up to kind of separate our crappy little neighborhood from a park that was literally just behind us. And this park is pretty nice. It's called Sugden Park. It is mostly a kind of sizable lake. I'm not gonna say it was really big, but it was like a decent size. And they would host water sporting events there. You could rent boats and learn how to sail. There was a little beach for families swimming, small piers for you to fish off of. We would go there for 4th of July shows and stuff like that. But this was kind of directly behind our house. A lot of water in this area. Sometimes if it was sunny outside, you'd still get kind of like rain showers, which I think were water spurts coming out of the lake and stuff. Now, This isn't super important to the story, but I just kind of want to give you an idea of the area that I was in. So one night we were getting ready to go out. It must have been a weekend, and we must have been going to do one of my stepdad's favorite pastimes, which was chow down at a Chinese buffet. I don't remember exactly how old I was at the time, but I do remember kind of wanting to get the night going. I was getting tired of waiting on my family to get ready, so I decided I'd go wait outside and maybe speed things up. As I stepped outside to our covered carport, now I looked around. It was already nighttime, but I noticed that it was kind of bright out for, you know, how dark it should have been. And I thought, wow, the moon must be like crazy bright right now. So I walked out to the end of our driveway, out from under the covered carport, and instinctively turned left because we lived on the end of the cul-de-sac, and to the left was how you got in and out of the neighborhood. To the right would have been that canal that separated us from the park. Turning left, I look out to the sky, and it's pitch black. Not a star in the sky, no moon. And I thought, that's kind of weird. Maybe the moon is on the other side. So I turn around to get a look at the other side, and that's when I saw it. It was what I initially thought was the moon about to crash into the earth for a split second. But then I realized what I was actually looking at was just a giant, bright white orb in the sky. And this thing was massive. Like I said, I thought it was the moon for a second, like coming at the earth. Then I realized that it was more of an oval shape, and it was kind of just hovering there. And I mean, this thing was huge. It was bigger than our house, which wasn't very big, but, you know, a house compared to a child, pretty big. And this thing was just floating just above the tree line, kind of hovering. It wasn't moving. And as a little kid, somewhere between the age of like 8 and 10, I just froze. I was panicking inside. I was like, oh my God, what is this thing? My family was still inside. It was just me outside alone, staring at this thing that I couldn't explain. And it was just, like I said, hovering there. And as a kid, freaking out, I didn't know what to do. Do I call out to my family? Do I run back inside and hide? I guess we'd been going to church recently, so I did what my young mind probably thought was the best thing to do, and just started to pray.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just kind of pray that this wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't a world-ending event, that everything was going to be okay, that this thing is just going to go away and everything will be fine. Maybe it was all just in my imagination, but no, this thing was there. It was there. It was floating just a few yards, more than a few yards. It felt very close to me, especially as a child. And as if my prayers were being answered in real time, this object began to move, as if it was aware of my presence and needed to acknowledge me. So it started to turn towards me. And as this thing completed a 180-degree rotation and was now looking at me dead on, I realized that this wasn't some foreign object that I couldn't explain. It was actually something that I was kind of familiar with. I'd never seen it before in person, but I had seen it on TV during sporting event broadcasts. What I was looking at was the Goodyear blimp. I guess they were having some kind of show at the lake just across the canal. And so all the fear immediately went away. But I was kind of blown away to the fact that at least then, there's literally nothing on the other side of the Goodyear blimp. It was just a white orb in the sky, like a giant white orb. And I just kind of froze with fear, and I thought I was going to die for a second because the Goodyear blimp was floating over my house, which you wouldn't expect. You know,
No.
you'd expect to see that at like a stadium or something, but no, it was right there over my house. So yeah, that's my my little UFO UAP story.
You really painted a wonderful picture at the beginning. I was like, I've known you for like 15 years. I've never heard this story. Yeah. And then you said, I've seen it on TV, and I was like, oh fuck, I have heard this story.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told that story to my family. Or I might have been too embarrassed, but yeah, no, I think about that all the time. How I once thought I was going to die by the hands of the Goodyear blimp.
Ah, that's so good. Like, if the story had continued in a similar fashion, like, the object turned in space from where it was, and on the side was a disgusting foreign language that I didn't quite understand, symbols that were profane, and wait, it just says Goodyear. Yeah. I love that. That's amazing.
I still to this day, why they would cheap out and only put Goodyear on one side of it.
On one side?
Yeah, no clue. And then the backside just being like sheer white. I don't know. But I guess it was hovering high enough above the tree line that I could see the balloon portion of it. Right. But just low enough that I couldn't see like the basket like or whatever. I don't know what the anatomy of a blimp is, but yeah, it was the perfect combination to scare the hell out of a little kid.
Here's my proposal. Apparently there's only like 25 operational blimps in the world, and they're all used for advertising purposes, but here's my pitch. On the other side of a blimp, on the side that you're not advertising on, which is bonkers to me that you're not utilizing both sides, just put the words, "This is a blimp," and it's covered. We're good. No more stories like this ever have to happen again.
So I wonder all the time if someone else had seen that and like had a similar reaction to me. But yeah, no, that's crazy. I'm trying to remember if I was alone the whole time or if my family had walked out just as it turned around, which would make my story even more unbelievable to them, or just not as urgent, you know?
Right.
I don't remember any of the details around it, but it's so vivid in my mind and how stupid it was.
It kind of reminds me, X, I don't know if you've ever met my dad.
Elvis?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So he's a very like old school, no nonsense cowboy. You know, he lives on a farm. He grows plants in a garden that he sells locally, and he raises chocolate labs. Well, he's very dismissive of like, I won't even say paranormal stuff, of anything, right? Like you could talk about like fiction books, and he's like, I don't have any interest in that.
Fair.
Yeah, but he one time very earnestly admitted to me and my Uncle Roy a time where he thought he experienced a UFO or something akin to a UFO. A practice in Central Texas is arrowhead hunting. Yeah. And I don't have this written down anywhere, so if I stumble, it's, that's why. But he would go arrowhead hunting a lot. He would go onto people's land. He would approach them and say, hey, I'm collecting arrowheads to turn into the museum in town, and I was wondering if I could look on your land. And they're like, absolutely. Just, be out by this time and we'll call it good. Well, he was on a friend of his, owned some land. He was on a friend of his land, so he was there pretty late. It was dark outside. The moon was out. It was a well-lit night, but he was just getting back to his truck from his trek around this property, and he was sitting there and he was just kind of listening to the radio, and out of nowhere, he sees this impossibly bright light coming from, I'm going to say west, but it's just like the truck's left, right? So you're sitting in a truck. To your left, the far left, is this extremely bright light that is heading directly towards you. And as it reaches your location, you realize that it's like about 4 or 5 feet in front of your truck, and it passes by at a speed comparable to like a train, like a bullet train, and then continues until it's out of sight. He is such a boring guy that story was like extremely non-engaging. But I remember being a kid and hearing that, and I was like, what did it look like? And he was like, yeah, it was bright. I'm like, okay, so was it like an orb? And he was like, I don't know. Was it a train? And he was like, well, there was no train tracks out there. There was no highways out there. He's in the middle of nowhere. He said he parked his truck against a fence. So if a vehicle of some kind had been going through there, it would have destroyed the fence.
Right.
And he said it was off the ground. And mind you, this is Central Texas, so like it's hill country. It's not like flat. And there's a bunch of carnivorous trees that are like really squatty. They're more like large bushes, really. So when it disappeared out of sight, it's just because he couldn't see through the bushes. But yeah, and like that's it. Like he tells it really casually, and he's like, and then I went home and I ate some bread.
All of the stories about your dad. I'll have to meet him before it's too late.
Yeah, before he's getting up there. He's already had one heart attack.
No, you hear plenty of stories like that. I imagine so many people that we know probably have stories like that, especially the ones who grew up in like the middle of nowhere. Strange things happen in the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah, what a reference.
Yeah, no, I know I have family in Puerto Rico. They've all experienced something, especially since it's like
you
right there.
The chupacabra.
The chupacabra, yeah. I don't know if we're going to release that episode, but yeah, like I said, when I was 2 years old, I was living in Puerto Rico, which would have been 1995. Right. Which is when the chupacabra first appeared. So, but yeah, no, aliens, UFOs, UAPs, those are the things that kind of intrigue me and, dare I say, like scare me more than like ghost stories or, cryptid sightings and stuff like that. Because there's like a plausibility that these are what we think they are. Granted, there might be more explanations, probably stuff that makes way more sense than aliens. But I feel like most of the population believes, if not wants to believe in it, and wants to experience something. And after my little UAP scare, I was surprised. You said it earlier that as a kid, you probably would have like shit your pants. I was surprised that I was calm enough, I guess. Like I was freaking out inside, but like I didn't pee myself or like run scared, crying, screaming, or any of that stuff. I just kind of like froze and was like, what can I do to fix this,
I gotta tell someone.
But
and this was a time before like phones or cell phones even had cameras, or actually probably before anyone really had cell phones. I say anyone.
So there were cell phones. They weren't like all over the place. Like I remember my stepdad had one of those flip phones with the push to talk that chirped,
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Sprint, whatever it was before Sprint. But it was before, the internet was in everybody's pockets. So I never was able to look into whether there was an event going on or if the Goodyear blimp was just flying over my neighborhood for some reason.
Right.
I imagine because that lake was back there that, there had to be some kind of event. There was like stadium seats on one section of it with like water ramps and stuff that I imagine they hosted shows at. I never saw any of them, but I know that stuff was there, so it had to have been happening. And at this point, I don't remember any other details that I could go back and look to see if there was like some kind of event going on.
I will say that a stadium event would explain why there were no stars in the sky.
Oh yeah, no,
just like light pollution.
That blimp was so bright, and the stadium lights being on in the park were surely kind of obscuring any view of like the stars and stuff. So,
right,
yeah, it's a pretty simple explanation. That's why I included that portion of the sky being pitch black and everything else being pretty bright around me. So
that was a good touch.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to have to do it for this alien-themed episode. If you have any supernatural stories of your own, you could submit them to this show on any of our socials at PairO'Dudes. That's PAIR_O_DUDES.
We've been a Paranormal Dudes, ever in need of stories to intrigue, perplex, and maybe even frighten. So remember, if you can't explain it, post about it. And until then, stay tuned and stay haunted.